up next, we have, I've been waiting for this for so long. I promised myself I would hop off, but I'm going to stick on for a little while and just be a part of the conversation as it starts. So we have Brandon there. Hey, Brandon, Peter. We have Brandon from Blitz. We have Peter from Redwood. We have Chris Ball from Bison. And we have Chris Burns, who's creating a brand new community around what we are calling the full stack Jamstack environment. And I think FSJam was something that I think Chris Burns coined. I think Chris Burns is the one who coined. Hey, Chris. You know what? Let's just do intros all around. So this conversation, again, is to talk about the future of the Jamstack and of JavaScript deploying right to the edge and how all of that works with these brand new frameworks that are coming up, Redwood, Blitz, Bison, and there's so many others that are slowly starting to come out of the woodworks. But these three are the ones that I think are really, really interesting. So let's do intros all around. Chris, why don't you start, and then let's just see who catches the ball.
Which Chris?
Good question.
That was a good play on words with my name, by the way. So you go with Chris first and see who catches the ball.
Yeah.
Nice
so that means okay. So that means Chris.
Let's go with Burns first.
There we go.
Okay. So my name's Christoper Burns. I'm a tech entrepreneur based in the UK. Graduated university 5 years ago and started my career from there. I'm the main tech lead of my business, and I've been working along. I met Redwood and started working alongside Redwood and learning a lot about FSJam and how I really see it go further. And then Chris Bowl posted on the community about Bison, and that's when I coined the term FSJam to hopefully make it succeed.
Oh, a little bit of history. Interesting. I didn't know that. I didn't know that part. So I guess, catching the ball. Chris, ball.
Yeah. So for me, Chris, CTO at Echobind. So we work with lots of different clients, all the way from 2-person startups up to large companies like Univision and Bose. Everything in between, which I think gives a really great perspective on kind of newer tech like this. And so for us, we have sort of evolved our core greenfield stack, is kind of what we call it, over time, where there are some times where we're not able to use kind of the Jamstack, but overall, like, that's our main preference for new projects. And so we really just try to make sure that, with whatever we're working with, that we're moving forward on that. And so for Bison was kind of born out of that, from our kind of manual thing that we had started a while back. I know before, Brandon, Peter, and everybody had started, at least that I had seen, there was probably some internal stuff going on of those different frameworks. And and the biggest thing I think is just like at this stage, I think I mentioned this kind of last month, is that I just love kind of the collaboration aspect and everybody bringing ideas to the table and just kind of figuring out everything that we're doing. So unfortunately for us, and fortunately at the same time, this month has been incredibly busy, so there hasn't been a lot of movement on the Bison project, but we're looking to pick that up in October.
For sure. Super cool. Let's go with Brandon.
Hello, I'm Brandon. I'm the creator of Blitz.js, and since I started Blitz back in February, I've been working mostly full time on Blitz. So I've averaged 30 hours per week since then, and then I'm doing about 20 to 25 hours a week consulting on the side to support myself. And I've been doing consulting, like freelancing, for over 3 years now. So I really enjoy that and enjoy the flexibility. And so it's fit in great here, so I can just split my time however I want. So yeah, I was excited to talk to you all. I've talked with Chris multiple times in-person at conferences. For a couple of years back, and then
React Rally.
Talked with Peter too personally, and Chris, I haven't talked to you directly, but it's cool to be here.
Yeah, it's cool.
Awesome. And Peter, I think from all of you, I think Peter, you're the only one I haven't talked to personally. So I'm looking forward to your intro as well. So Peter, tell us a bit about yourself. Can't hear you. Can't hear you. Nope. Just can't hear you.
Yeah, I hear some faint noise. I think it's the wrong. You have the wrong mic selected, maybe.
No.
It almost sounds like the mic is in the other room.
Yeah.
Cool.
Like in the isolation booth recording the the vocals or something. It's all good.
It's happened to me where I left my Bluetooth headphone somewhere else, but somehow the speaker was routed through my laptop.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I've left my watch charging sometimes and had a call go straight to my watch, and audio is just coming out of that, and I'm like, I don't even know where the thing's coming from. But
let's get the conversation. Let's get the conversation started, and we'll wait for Peter, and Peter can intro when he's back, or maybe he's back. Oh, he's back.
Okay, I'm back.
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
I'm so sorry. My Bluetooth headphones are actually in the other room, and I was connected to them. So
that was my guess. From personal experience, go for it.
I'll go really quickly since I sat there trying to talk without making any sounds. My name is Peter. I am originally from South Africa, and I worked in a company with Tom called Chatterbug, where we found that a lot of the time that we were spending trying to actually build software was actually spent integrating different pieces of technology that we like to work with. So like GraphQL and Storybook and routing and all these different things, like ESLint configurations, Prettier. Like for someone that could actually be a full-time job. So what we decided to do was build a framework, Redwood, that made all those things possible just by running one command. And we continue to try and make that world easier to work with.
Oh, pleasure to meet you, Peter. And I guess so. Chris Burns is the one who is de facto hosting this conversation because, well, Chris has started this community called FSJam. It's on Discord. There's a Twitter handle, and it's just starting to pick up steam. And Chris is gonna be hosting. Since I think Chris is the only one who's actually not in the core team of Framework, so Chris, it makes it really natural for Chris to host this conversation. And I'll just hang around for a little bit because I kind of want to be a part of it. But off to you, Chris. And where do you want to take this conversation?
Yeah, so I've put together some questions that I believe will show pros and cons of both areas of things like Blitz, things like Bison, and things like Redwood. I will admit, hand on heart, that I've only ever tried Redwood. I know that, but I have put together some questions that should hopefully go across all of them. And so my first question really is, whoever wants to answer it, and we'll go from there, have some conversation back and forth, is what led you guys to the light bulb moment when you went, actually, I need to put a name on this and make it a package for more developers to use?
Go ahead, Peter.
So for us, it was myself and Tom, and there's actually a little bit of history with RedwoodJS. It used to be called Chainsaw before, and we thought that might have been a little bit too destructive because we actually both really love trees, and then we renamed it to Hammer, and there was another project called Hammer.js. We decided to pivot into Redwood, which wasn't taken. So I think we always we always wanted to have this as something that other people could use and install. So that was the goal from day one for us.
Well, for on our side, it was a little different. It was basically started off as a need for just as an agency being able to, a lot of companies kind of have their own boilerplate kind of thing, and like we need to start a brand new project, and which thing do you copy what from, and did you choose the old one or the new one, and just trying to develop patterns over time. So that was initially where it started, and then as things sort of came together, it was like, again, just getting it out into the ecosystem seemed like a very good move, even though that obviously the other projects in this ecosystem are a lot further along. But again, like just giving people a spot to sort of jump off and kind of see everything that's there and do what they want with it.
Brandon?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I've been a consultant, and I've been building a lot of apps for, like, new apps from the ground up for small startups mostly. And like especially throughout last year, 2019, I kept wanting like a Ruby on Rails type of framework for JavaScript and React, and it just didn't exist. And if you go back and search my Twitter history, you'll see like every month or two I'm tweeting like, it's time for Rails on React, something like this. And I was tweeting things like, somebody please make this so I don't have to. But like I didn't know what it would look like for a long time. I think that's kind of a lot of people didn't know, like, would there be GraphQL in there or not? And it turned out it's both. And so how it actually kind of came down was I had a phone call with a friend of mine this past February who's a Ruby on Rails developer. And we were sparring back and forth about like the trade-offs of building something with Ruby on Rails plain versus React and SPA and stuff. And I couldn't really win like that. Having an API is like more productive when you have an API in the stack because it's just an extra thing to take care of. And so I was like, just kind of vexed after that call, like, you know what, like, I think we can make this happen, which at the time I thought it would be 100% server-side rendered with an Next.js. And that's kind of what I initially like jumped off of. But I had the idea, and then a week later I announced that I was working on Blitz. And then in that day, like somebody replied and said like, hey, have you heard about, I think it was Hammer at the time. And so I looked at it and I was like, oh, you still need an API, so it's not what I'm going for. So kept charging ahead. So here we are. I think it's really great that we have all these options. And I think I really do think it's worked out great because I haven't had a single request for adding GraphQL into Blitz because I think if somebody really wants GraphQL, they're going to go choose Redwood. And if somebody doesn't really want to mess with GraphQL, they're going to choose Blitz. And so I think it's really nice to have both of those options. And then Chris is kind of, somewhere in the middle where if you want GraphQL, but you don't want to, whatever. So I think it's great to have all these options.
Yeah. How I came across Redwood is that I originally built the MVP of my startup with Gatsby as the base, Lambda serverless functions hooked up to a Prisma 1 database using GraphQL to connect it all together. Obviously, all these technologies were just almost there, and it was so infuriating to get started. And then when the point came across of Prisma 2 was like, yeah, guys, it's now out of beta. I was like, oh, I don't want to remake everything. And then I came across Blitz and Redwood. And Redwood already had a GraphQL API system built with Prisma 2. So I was like, off I go. Who cares if it says do not use it yet? I'm gonna do it. And we're getting there with it. So you led on to a really good point that I think is really emerging with these React ecosystems, is how I feel like it's much like Linux distros, as in all the kind of different distros of Linux distribute Linux with their own custom features and systems on top. And I feel like React is very much heading that way with things like Redwood, Blitz, Bison. It's very much what opinions do you want to lean to and what ones do you want to lean away from. And I really think that's, the more we think about these kind of frameworks, the more that way, as in not one single one will suit every solution. The far more faster we'll see each one collaborate and grow together. So my next question would be, what would be the ideal use case for each of your frameworks, i.e. a SaaS product or an e-commerce store, as in what is the first go-to use case? And I hope it's not a to-do app. Who wants to go first? Chris?
Brandon, what you got? All right,
Brandon.
I'll go first. So for us, like it's, we've used it on a lot of different apps. And so MVPs, it's worked really well for like full scale applications that are going to be a lot more complex down the line because we're building in the GraphQL API out of the gate. And so I would say there's probably a subset of MVP projects to where perhaps the timelines are a little bit too tight to maybe kind of what Brandon was hinting to where you might not be worth that small extra effort to bring in the API layer, but what we're trying to do is choose the best pieces and conventions to do that API layer to make it not a lot of work.
Brandon?
Yeah, I like the ideal use case is anything that needs a database, basically. So definitely SaaS apps, and like because of Next.js is so good with the hybrid static page generation and things, so you could build a content site. Um, but like yeah, you're going to get a lot of the features if it's going to be some type of SaaS application where you're admin dashboard type of thing.
Peter?
Yeah, I think for us, we kind of have like a persona that we're trying to target, and it's mostly people who want to build web applications, like SaaS applications as well, that need a really robust API layer.
It's really interesting that a lot of these three have been like very much we need a database, but also I believe all three of your applications would work without having your own database connecting to a third-party database, like Shopify, for example. It's very much this very fluid thing. So my next question is more geared toward Chris and Brandon, and it is that we have Next.js, but why would I want to use Blitz or Bison on top of Next.js? What's really to gain from that? Brandon?
So the biggest thing to gain from Blitz is that it eliminates that entire API layer of your stack. So whereas Redwood and Chris are optimizing, not Redwood and Bison are optimizing that API layer, which is great, we're taking a different approach and we're just like eliminating it from your developer experience. So it actually is there in runtime, but we abstract it away into a compile step. And so when you're developing your app, you don't have to worry about fetching data from an API or like creating your GraphQL schema and writing your queries against that schema. You just write functions that run on the server, import them directly into your components, and just use them directly. And then at compile time, we swap that import out with an API call. So that's really the biggest benefit, is that it speeds up your productivity, very drastically, because that whole section of your architecture is gone. And there are different trade-offs. You don't have a GraphQL API out of the box for other things, but you can use the generated APIs there in mobile apps, and we have people that are starting to do that today. But then potentially we'll have some nicer integrations to add a GraphQL API on top of that.
Very nice. Chris?
So I would say that the approach with Bison is basically, if you were to take Next.js and then go do all this stuff yourself, you fast forward, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever, and all of that stuff is kind of there for you as a starting point. And if you want to unwind some of it, that's cool. But just trying to take that whole layer of like, yes, we'll generate a Next.js app, and then where should we put the API? Should we try to customize that? How should we do all these things? So it's trying to just take those decisions off the table. But it's basically Next.
That's great answers. My next question, and this is, I guess, very opinionated, because all three frameworks have a Create a React app, is do you think there's still a place for the standard Create a React app these days, when you could go with an opinionated version such as Next, Blitz, Bison, etc.?
Me personally,
Peter?
no. We stopped using
No?
it. Sorry.
Yeah? No, it's fine. It's up to what do you guys think?
Yeah, I agree. I think that Create React app is like, I think it's time to retire it, honestly. And I think for pretty much any time that you want to use Create React app, unless it's a browser extension, you want to use Next.js for most cases, because you get the statically pre-rendered pages and so forth. Automatic page splitting, which is a big one. Where Create React app, you have to manually code split all your routes, but with Next.js, it's just by default. So a lot of Next.js has a lot of performance stuff built into it, and they're collaborating with the Chrome team, making optimizations there and so forth. So I would highly recommend using Next.js for, like, instead of Create React app, even if it's just plain Next.
Great answers. Peter?
So I don't use Create React app anymore. Sorry, my little cat's going to destroy this. I wouldn't say that I think it's time to retire it or that it shouldn't exist. I think there is a place in this world where you build from a foundation, and maybe some of the choices that we've decided to make aren't ones that you want, and that's a great place to start.
Yeah,
I think what I'll hop in here and say that what I've been doing lately is whenever I wanted to use Create React App, I'll just use Parcel Bundler instead. And that way, Parcel just has support for React out of the box. It has support for TypeScript out of the box, Sass out of the box. So for me, it's not a choice of whether I want to use CRA. It's a choice of, okay, well, what bundler do I want to use that comes with all this stuff just out of the box for my own use cases? There's that too.
So the next question, I hope you guys are liking these questions. They're just trying to be very beginner friendly, move opinions around, is what do you guys think the overall next steps of this category is of FSJam? I fully believe we've got down the deployment of websites, and now we need to get down the deployment of databases and APIs. What do you guys think? Chris?
Databases is by far the biggest area in my mind. Like, that's the one that no matter what option you take, it's like, well, what thing that's external from my hosting provider am I going to use? And like, if you happen to choose that you're going to just go with Heroku, which is not overly Jamstack friendly, maybe you're bundled, but otherwise you're having to make this choice of like, well, yes, we need to bring in another database. I'm going to go set that up. And, it would be, in my mind, it would be great to have that become sort of an out of the box at the provider level, whether it's, Versal, Netlify, like figuring out like what that domain looks like. And I understand it's a very hard problem, but to me, that's like the biggest area.
Brandon?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think there's like this big elephant in the room with Jamstack that people are like, oh, Jamstack's amazing. Like, it's so fast, deployment, connect APIs, all this stuff. But there's this entire like thing, which is your backend, your database, and your background processing, queues, and things like that, that a lot of people, when they're talking about this stuff, it's like they assume that all that stuff already exists. Which if you're at a massive company, it probably does. But for like 99% of us that work at companies less than 100 employees, we have to build all that stuff. And there's no easy way to do it now. So like, for example, most Blitz apps, production Blitz apps right now are deployed to render, because you can deploy the Blitz app and the database and queues all in the same platform. And so it's super easy, but it's not serverless. And so we really like that deployment experience of Vercel, where it's all serverless, super awesome. But this database and queuing thing is a big problem. And like, I really want to make a new company, a new deployment platform that gives you the deployment experience of Vercel, or Netlify is similar, with a built-in database and connection pooling like set up, and build in background processing and queuing stuff, and the ability to bring your own AWS account so that you're not locked into a certain provider, but like the platform can give you the really great experience, but then you can sort of eject and then just go on and do your custom stuff if you need. And I think that something like this like really needs to exist.
Very much so, especially with the anti-lock-in, for example. A lot of companies like Netlify, Vercel, on the lower tiers, you get whatever country their servers are in. So say if you live in Europe, for example, all your data is passing from Europe to America back to Europe. So that really does increase the time sometimes. So This whole thing is how I look at it. There's so many tools that we could potentially build. As in, people can build companies, SaaS products to help make these systems easier above the framework level. What do you think, Peter?
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said here. And I think, Brandon, if you ever want to start a company with a competitor, I'm very interested in tackling that problem with you. I think for me, one of the things that's really nice about the Jam stack is deploying to the edge. And that's very easy to do with your static assets. But the moment you want to do that with your serverless functions, it's damn near impossible, which is like what Christoper was hinting towards. Like that kind of thing, I think, can be done as elegantly as it is for the front end. It just needs to be done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, there's a big need. Sorry. Yeah.
I was going to say there's one massive issue Redwood is already helping solve with repeater.dev. It is one of the products that one of the core team members is working on, and that is when you don't have an always-on server, how do you tell a server to wake up at 5 o'clock and run a command? And that's where services like Repeater are coming in to help ease them processes. I know you're working on something else, Peter, as well. What about you, Chris?
We use GitHub Actions currently for that. So that was an area of big, ironically big pain point. Like you just need a simple cron job that goes through and does stuff. Like, and it's kind of what you were saying, that a lot of people, when they're evaluating these API parts of these frameworks, it's like you just expect that to be a thing. So it's really interesting that it kind of hasn't been. And I know there's been some attempts at sort of add-on platforms to providers to offer this, and there's some basic services out there that kind of leave a lot to be desired. So I think, part of it is services like this, and I think part of it is there a point in the future where these can eventually fold into deployment platforms, like it used to with Heroku back in the day, in my mind.
One of the contributors to Blitz, or actually one of the maintainers, is working on Quirl.dev. I pasted a link in the Slack.
Cool.
And it's also a similar thing for background processing and stuff. And it works really well with Next.js because you can, you basically you hang it on an API route and just pass it some configuration, and then you can import that object anywhere else in your app and easily queue to it. And then it'll automatically make the request back to your app to process those jobs. And I think it would work with Redwood too, with the API, because you have custom API routes, right, Peter? Like just a regular API endpoints.
Yeah, it would definitely.
Yeah. So I think it would work there too. So he's just getting going on that, so it'll be interesting to see. But even with that, I still think it's better if you can have a deployment platform that's like all integrated with it together.
Very much. It's interesting that that's the approach Gatsby's taken. So obviously Gatsby is just a Jam framework, but sometimes you do see them also going into this area of how about attach a server to it. So there's opinions on how we want to do things with everything. So yeah. Has anyone got anything else to say on that question?
There's so much to say about this, because what I'm thinking of is, if you look at how, and obviously this is not over network IO is, I'm not even going to address that problem of there's a big wall called network, and then half of the stack is secured and the other half is insecure. I'm not going to address that, but just from an abstract, fantasy world point of view, you have these platforms like Android, you have the Linux OS, you have the browser, and they give you so much inbuilt functionality. Like the browser has internationalization, the browser has time zone internationalization, it has an API client built in. Android gives you a cron scheduler built in, and I can keep going on. You guys get the gist of it. It's shocking, to me at least, that nothing like an integrated platform like that exists for the web. It's like, okay, it's 2020. It's about time. Where's my Jetpack?
It's called AWS. It does exist. It's AWS.
It does and it doesn't though. It does and it doesn't though, because AWS is. It doesn't feel like an integrated platform. It doesn't have static typing just built in that you can just edit your stack in the browser. You have to still piece it all together. Yeah. And it'd be nice to just have something that you can just, npm import, and it gives you everything you need. But those are my 2 cents.
Yeah, totally. And when you're trying to do this on something like AWS, you look at the costs of it. You're like, all right, I can pay per minute or per megahertz or whatever. But then there's the unexpected costs of having to learn those entire platforms, and that's part of the thing that the serverless is meant to take away.
Yeah, it would take you 2 days just to learn all the names of every AWS product.
Yeah, I made a joke that you can actually just type any 3 letters. You can type AWS any 3 letters, and you'll hit a service. I'm pretty sure.
Nice.
No, pretty likely.
Can I throw a topic out? Do you mind?
Yeah, throw one out.
Okay. So I've been thinking a lot about areas of overlapping, basically being able to all like help work on one thing that moves everything forward. And so one of the biggest areas that I've been kind of just rolling around in my head is generators, because lots of projects outside of just these 3 use them, right? So it could be a much bigger initiative, but I do think there's probably room somewhere for some sort of like slightly more abstract way to read a set of templates from somewhere. And those could be baked into the framework by default. They could read from an external directory, and then generate code in a certain way. And so I know that like each project needs to generate in different ways and change files and patch things. And, so there's definitely some edges, but just as a general thing, I feel like that's an area where it would be good to sort of stop reinventing the wheel collectively. So wanted to toss that out.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really big subject. For example, with Redwood generators, when you're starting out and you want to put something together really fast, it's super helpful. But then as soon as you want to start building your own UI, you kind of have to build a generator, go back, customize the UI. So if there was some kind of open project that everyone stuck to the same use case and like you put your code here, it generates it completely completely to how you need it to be, that would be super beneficial for a lot of people, I believe.
Peter, what are your templates like? Are they like handlebar style templates, or what are you using?
I actually think we're using Lodash. They have a template library. I'm not sure what the syntax ends up looking like, but we've discussed many times about changing them and making them more standard and easier to extend and stuff like that. So,
and Chris, you have plop in Bison?
Hygen. So we use Hygen, which is EJS based. Yeah.
And then is that handlebars?
EJS.
Oh,
so
EJS.
It looks like Ruby. It looks like Ruby in JavaScript. Basically.
Okay. Yeah.
So when you just interpolate it with Ruby syntax.
Right. So we built a custom templating engine using Babel, and the reason is so that our template files are regular like JS or TS files. And then we use process.env for like if else and things. So you can say like if process.env some template variable that you pass in, and then you can do if else, interpolation, etc. Oh yeah, and then the string, like to interpolate a value, is double underscore like model name and then another double underscore. And so it's all valid JavaScript, so that ESLint works, your TypeScript stuff like pretty much works, versus being something totally different like a totally different template file. So far it's working pretty good, but yeah, it's definitely something I think we could and probably should collaborate on.
Yeah,
that's really like, what would the interface look like? I'm curious, because would it all be one CLI that you npm install -g, and then you can generate a Redwood or Bison or Blitz project out of, and then also manipulate that project, create new views and create new entities out of that same CLI? Is that what we're talking about? Because that sounds cool.
I don't think you need to install it globally, but yeah. So I think it would end up being some small thing that does this work that could all be a dependency for everybody. And you could probably override where it looks for templates and all of that. But certainly there'd have to be some API agreements and iterating for sure.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, we're all doing the same thing.
Yeah. The other thing is what we're calling recipes. I think, Peter, for you, they're generators too, or so they're Gatsby recipes is kind of how we got the name, but Gatsby recipes are MDX format, and so you can use like components to scaffold out files and modify existing files and stuff. It's pretty slick because Gatsby recipes, they're set up so that you can upgrade recipes. So like you can install a recipe into your project, and then if the recipe version changes, you just use the React renderer to like re-render that recipe, and it'll automatically update files in your project if it needs to be. So that's a pretty cool concept. We're not using the MDX format yet. It's just we're just using the name, and we have a custom recipe thing that's using JS code shift, I think, for doing Babel transforms, for adding adding theme providers and stuff into your code automatically if you need. But yeah, again, that's something else that we could totally collaborate on.
Yeah, totally. There's another thing that actually is a little bit of a segue, but something that we could collaborate on as a group, which is when we build our websites or our projects, like be it Blitz or Bison or Redwood, there are these artifacts that are generated and uploaded to a server, and something needs to happen with those. Generally, all those things are kind of similar. There's a project on the internet, I'm trying to find it right now, but it's a general standard format for a Jamstack website. So if you like generate this kind of thing and spit out a manifest, then any deployment provider could use that to say, oh, okay, I know how to configure and put this on in the right places. Instead of having to go to every single platform and configure it individually, it's just this manifested agreement between everyone. It seems like we're all trying to achieve the same thing.
Yeah.
It's like Docker for the front end type of thing, right?
Yeah. I can't
forget.
find it right now.
Oh yeah, it's by an Australian, Glenn Mattern.
That's the one.
Fab.
That's it.
Fab spec. Fab.dev.
Front-end
There we go.
application bundles.
So the last I heard is that he's not really interested in doing full stack. It's mainly just front end. So for example, I think there's only one. What was it? It's like only in one bundle. Everything's put into one bundle. Your backend's all in one bundle or something, and so it's not like scalable at all for the backend, if I remember correctly.
And you know that there's that joke where there's the standard that doesn't meet your expectations, and then you just end up creating another standard. Maybe this is that time.
Yeah, so we need a full stack application bundle is what we need.
Yeah.
Well, it's like going into the thing. Are you serverless or server full? You know, when also you want to host servers. You know, so standards. I definitely think it's something we could all collaborate on and move it forward, because maybe that would help make deployments easier. You know, allow more providers to deploy faster as well.
Also around tooling, like if someone wanted to make a bundle smaller or push out some of the node dependencies that didn't have to be there, there'd be an easy way to figure that out or write tools around that. Anyway, don't want to derail this.
I just quickly wanted to go back to the recipes. I think recipes are this really interesting concept that's only just starting to show its face, really. Is this thing of, you know, how easy could it be to get started with a project, add your Tailwind or Chakra UI, you know, and really get going? Should these recipes be standardized across any project? So Gatsby, Redwood, Blitz, Bison, so you could install the same recipe all the way. What do you guys think?
I think a subset of them maybe.
That's actually a good idea that I hadn't really thought about. Like, so if you have standard kind of primitives for like adding a dependency, for adding theme providers, for adding API routes, for adding pages, and then each framework can kind of implement that primitive, sort of like how React Native works, where you can have React Native Web, React Native Mac OS. So it's the same primitives, but then the underlying implementation is different based on the framework.
Yeah, we probably just expose some hooks and leverage them.
Every single project is React with Webpack, so pretty much it's where does it need to go and making sure it goes there. And then you could then say to people like Tailwind, you know, this is your job to keep this plugin recipe up to date. You know, I know that's a harder question, but you know, it's then putting a standard that they can easily connect to make sure their stuff is used properly. And I've seen that before where I've been using a service, I've made a Gatsby plugin for that service, but then I slightly interpretate that service differently to the original author. So it's that middle ground of how easy is it to connect both things together. And if we could have some standardized way, I think that would really, really help.
The kind of following on something else I envision with recipes is being able to have paid recipes, like a recipe marketplace. Mm-hmm. So a picture of the WordPress plugin ecosystem and paid plugins and things. You can have the same thing with paid recipes, where you have a recipe marketplace. People can write recipes that are doing like more advanced stuff, like a whole entire Shopify integration or something. Two-way data sync with Shopify could be a paid recipe that you can just pay for and install. Think on that one.
Yeah, it's quite big. I think there's something in the Laravel community that kind of does the same thing. I forgot what it's called. I've got to think now.
Has anyone used Laravel here?
No.
We
integrated with it, but I mean,
Laravel is okay. I prefer Symfony, but go on, Peter.
No, I was. It's like kind of like the stepbrother that everyone ignores. I mean, it's not the stack that we would choose, but it's there. There are thousands of people using it, but I've never really paid much attention.
I think if somebody wanted to learn Rails or Laravel, like either one of those, I think I would recommend them use Laravel today, because in the ecosystem around it, like Laravel Vapor being able to deploy it serverless directly to AWS, like there's really awesome stuff in their ecosystem. They have there's like a framework that basically removes the API, kind of similar, but it's so you can get dynamic reactivity on the front end without having an API. I forget what it's called, but yeah. So I think they're doing really cool stuff.
Yeah.
I'll just I know there are a few questions floating around just in the background. I sense them more than I hear them. Just gonna ELI 5 on Laravel. So Laravel is just it's basically Rails on PHP. And from what Peter just said, it sounds like the Laravel community has really grown. I know it was big, 6 years ago or 7 years ago, and it sounds like it's been maintaining steam. So if people are interested, it sounds like Laravel is really where a lot of the Rails community moved as well in a certain way. Although there's also Adonis.js. I don't know if you guys have seen Adonis.js on the JavaScript side. They're traditional MVC application structure in a very Railsy way, but in the JavaScript ecosystem. And they did it right. For an MVC structure with EJS sort of deal.
I'm going to throw out a big...
Go ahead. Wrong, Chris.
I was just going to say, I'm going to throw out a big challenge that we keep trying to work through and have not yet gotten there. So this is less of a technical challenge, and it's more of a wider ecosystem challenge, I think. So basically, it's dealing with healthcare and HIPAA concerns in a serverless, full, Jamstack kind of mentality. And it's interesting because, I've brought it up a few times with the team at Vercel, and it's like, well, it seems like that'd be something that we really should look at, but it's very, and I'm sure it's on like the roadmap at some point, but it's a hard thing to do. And I think you have to have there's a lot involved in HIPAA compliance. And, so I think in our world, it's traditionally been, there's a service called Aptable that's all Docker based. And there's also a service, we use Heroku Shield is the other one. But we're still trying to nail down, like Google Cloud seems to be sort of the best way to go. That still has like a BAA agreement that's kind of required for HIPAA compliant applications. So it's one of those areas that still trying to figure out. Still kind of some challenges. So I don't know if anyone else has kind of dealt with that stuff. But.
Sadly not.
Yeah. All right. Moving on.
figure it out and let us know. Let us know the solution.
I will.
Gullard asked, is there going to be a premium SaaS option for Redwood or Blitz? Peter?
Not that I know of. Maybe it's open source, so maybe someone will build one.
Yeah, no like premium version of Blitz. Like Blitz itself is always free open source. I might build services around it, like for example, deployment platform that Blitz could deploy to Redwood, whatever, something like that, but not the actual like framework itself.
I think that's key to a lot of these frameworks, is that the framework is open source, but then a lot of the services that go, actually, this could go really well with this, is where them extra options open for payment opportunities.
Actually, now that you mention that, it reminds me of Remix, which maybe we should bring them in here too, because they're building a full stack framework, but it's not open source, it's paid. And I from what it sounds like, even on Twitter over the past couple of days, it sounds like it's not quite, a little bit different, a lower level than like what we're doing here with the full stack framework. It sounds like it's a bit more closer to Next.js, that type of level where you still need to kind of bring your own database. It's not clear that it has a CLI for code generators and any of that stuff. But that's just something.
Do you know if they're targeting serverless for that?
I haven't. No, I don't know.
I've just seen.
I think it's all server. No, I don't know. It's unclear to me what it actually is.
It's made by the people that make React Router, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
So it's like how I describe it is React Router version of Next.js with some more opinions and like maybe features with routing and data integration and things.
Yeah. I think my last question, and it's quite a fun one, is have you each tried each other's frameworks? Peter?
I have not tried either of them, but I do enjoy the Blitz community, and I feel as if I am. I really like Blitz's architecture, and I like SuperJSON, and I love the community and Brandon and everything that he's done. So I haven't used it, but I'm excited about it. And Bison, I haven't looked at it as in depth as Blitz, but it's fairly new.
Chris?
I have.
Brandon? No, Brandon, you go.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I have generated a Redwood app on my machine, tested it out a little bit, and I like keep my eyes on the release notes, and I get forum notifications. Sometimes I will chime in with something if there's something I can offer of help. And for Bison, I have taken their Cypress stuff and some of their database testing. Yeah, like their Cypress end-to-end testing and GitHub Actions config. I've taken that, and I'm using that. I'll probably roll some of that into the Blitz default app. So yeah.
Chris?
Cool. Yeah. So I've generated both. Done a little bit of documentation contribution a while back for Redwood. No contributions yet for Blitz, but certainly keeping an eye on everything and periodically just like pulling things down, running a new app, seeing kind of how everything's shaping up across the board.
Great. Monik, what about you?
I'm just enjoying the conversation. I honestly thought I would hop off in about 10 minutes, and then you guys started talking about this really cool stuff, and you guys started blowing my mind. So thank you guys for the amazing conversation. And Chris, that was fantastic, those questions. It would be really cool to see like a universal generator. That'd be interesting. I don't know if that's feasible or doable, but I think that would. I've been talking about standardization for a long time in some way in web dev, and it'd be nice to see if something like this could standardize generators for every single project. That'd be interesting. But this was a great conversation. Thank you, Chris Burns, for hosting, and Brandon, Peter, Chris. It was a real pleasure having you guys here. Any parting comments or words? Or Chris, Burns, did you have any more questions up your sleeve?
No, I didn't. The only question I had was a very metaphorical question, is where does everybody want to see this FSJam community go, really? But that's up to everybody. Everyone can contribute to that.
Yeah. I think I'm the most neutral person. So as a potential user, I'd love to see an even easier way to deploy and use software, because the closer we get to just working on business logic, then the happier I'll be as somebody who's extremely busy and not able to code as much as he'd like to anymore. But it's just, if I could spin up an application in a couple of days, which is what you guys are doing, and it's a pleasure to see that happening. If you guys just keep doing what you're doing, I think it'd be awesome. Make it easier and easier to just stick to business logic.
Yeah. Any other last comments?
This is fun.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it.
We should do it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Chris Burns, maybe in your maybe in the FSJam Discord next time.
Maybe so. I think I don't want to talk too much, take up too much time, but the goal I have with FSJam is this thing of what's above all these frameworks. It's someone's first time looking at React, an FSJam framework. If so, yes. How do you introduce it to them? How do you introduce the concepts, the philosophy? That's something I'm also trying to work out, as what's the philosophy of an FSJam app? What is it above an FSJam website, a Jam website, sorry. So yeah, these are all things that I'm trying to figure out every day, and any contribution I would love for anyone to put in. We do have a Discord. I will link to it so you can all join. And really, it's just, let's have conversations, see where it all goes, really.
Cool.
Yeah, cool.
Awesome. Great. Thank you guys so much for hopping on and being with us today. This was awesome, and I'm hoping to have more and more of these conversations at Mintbean at a higher technical level. So thank you guys so much. I'm so grateful that you guys could make it, and we have another speaker coming up. So I don't know how to transition very well. Can somebody do this for me?
Bye.
Bye. That's
Bye.
my transition.
There
Bye.
we go.
Get your stickers at RedwoodJS.com. Bye.
Oh, plugs. Oh, I love plugs. Okay, so that was a lot of fun. So that was Blitz, Bison, and Redwood. Brandon, Chris Ball, and Peter Pistorius from those frameworks. It was such a great conversation. Thank you guys for coming on.